What's up, guys? Welcome to Do Whiskey. My name is Jeff. Now, this is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, why don't we jump into our review? Today, we're looking at the Aberlour 18-year-old. Stick around. So we've got another Aberlour with us today. Not too long ago, I did a review on the Aberlour A'bunadh, which is the brand's superstar release. And today I figured we would check out the 18-year-old. Aberlour is a Speyside distillery. It's owned by the Chivas brothers, and I think they're one of the better known distilleries out there. They're not quite on the same level as your Glenlivet's or your Glenfiddich's, but they're still pretty high on the totem pole. There's a list that's floating around on the internet, and on that list, Aberlour is listed as the 9th best-selling single malt in the world. But that list is from like 2018 or something. I don't know if that's still true in 2021, but regardless, Aberlour is still a huge brand that's very widely recognized. And they actually have a pretty expansive core range, although most of it I haven't tried. And the reason for that is almost across their entire core range, Aberlour has very light whiskeys, and I mean too light. Almost their entire core range is like 40%. Of course, you have the A'bunadh, which comes in a cask strength, but the standard issue releases outside of the A'bunadh, very weak ABV. And I've talked about this in the past. I can deal with lighter whiskeys. Whiskeys that come in at 43%, while not ideal, if they back it up with good flavors, I'm willing to give them a pass. I'm willing to let it slide. 40% is basically where I draw the line. I pretty much stopped buying whiskeys at 40% these days. They don't have the flavor, they don't have the intensity to hold my interest. If you want to be a respectable brand, 40% simply doesn't cut it. Anyway, low ABV aside, I do like the brand's house style, which I'm sure most of you already know is a very sherried one. Our 18-year-old here was launched in 2008. It was matured in a combination of bourbon and sherry barrels. And you guys should be aware that in 2018, I believe, Aberlour changed the bottle size for their 18-year-old. This used to come in a normal 700 milliliter bottle, but they switched that over to a 500 milliliter bottle. Now, I don't know if that change was motivated by a shortage of aged stock or just greed, but as you'd expect, the price did not shrink with the bottle. Anyway, the one we're looking at today is an older bottling, and I know that because of the style of the label. That's the old style label. I think it was like 2019 or 20. Pretty recently, Aberlour rebranded, they switched around their labels. Also, I know it's a 2018 release because they were kind enough to write the bottling date on the back. Here in Taiwan, 9 out of 10 whiskey shops are of course going to carry Aberlour products, and you'll find stuff like the 12-year-old, the new 14-year-old, probably the A'bunadh in most of them. The 18, not so much. This one only seems to pop up once in a while. Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I do like the Aberlour house style. I like me a good hit of sherry, and of course, who doesn't like a nice 18-year-old? So why don't we hop into a review of this one, see what our whiskey's all about, and in the meantime, if you can kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So Aberlour doesn't usually give us good specs outside of the A'bunadh, and unfortunately that's the case for our 18-year-old here. Our ABV on this one comes in at 43%. I believe this to be chill filtered. If anyone can confirm that down in the comments, please do. And we have E150A or caramel colorant in here. And, you know, this is an 18-year-old. I paid extra money for this stuff, and in the case of this one specifically, I paid more money for less whiskey. 500 ml bottle here. I don't think natural presentation is asking for too much. So you can check out our unnatural color here. As for bottle design, I actually quite like this one. I think it's got a good look to it. At 500 milliliters, the bottle does look a little bit dainty, but whatever. Girlfriend thinks it's cute, so there you go. But yeah, I like the aesthetics here. I like the label design. I like the color scheme, and I even like the squat bottle presentation. So presentation score here, 4.5 out of 5. Not a lot of info here. Of course, they're not going to brag about being colored and chill filtered. We have some tasting notes on the side here. We have another little blurb here saying it's rich and complex, perfectly structured, all of that. But yeah, it's a nice bottle. It's a nice look, but of course, too small. Let's try our nose. So traditional big dark sherry notes in this, as well as a fair amount of wood. You can tell this has some age to it. I'm getting some dark caramel here, some red fruit, some rum raisin, some red apple skins, some roasted malt, some wine tannins, cigar, and leather. Let's try our palate. Very gentle arrival, slightly oily mouthfeel, sherry, chocolate, raisins, tobacco, big fruits in here like apples, apple skins, some berry jam in here. We've got coffee, some fruit compote, and some oak. Now the finish. Lingering chocolate. A gentle but persistent woodiness. We have some unsweetened, almost herbal vanilla in here. There's some orange peel. More of that leather and tobacco. We have raisins, wine tannins, and some almonds. The finish here is not long. In fact, it's quite short. So I like this stuff. I think it's an excellent whiskey. We have a lot of those classic, dark, mature sherry flavors in here. And in a sense, it is a very traditional Speyside whiskey, but one that's very well done. Not only that, the age does shine through here. We can tell that it's an older whiskey because we have some very integrated, very elegant oaky notes in here. I just described that oakiness as gentle but persistent. In terms of production, as I mentioned earlier, this was matured in a combination of bourbon and sherry casks. But the sherry flavors in this are much more forward. The sherry casks have had a much bigger influence on the character of the whiskey, which of course is to be expected. That's how it usually goes. I especially like the leather and tobacco notes in this. Personally speaking, those are notes that I usually associate with more refined, more aged sherried whiskeys, which of course is what we've got here. I find those flavors to have a very gentlemanly appeal to them. In my mind, it kind of takes me to like a gentleman's club, and no, not that kind of gentleman's club, you degenerates. I'm talking more like the Reform Club, like those old world clubs where the world's rich and powerful men would gather. So I'm picturing like a mustachioed man in like proper 19th century attire, sitting on a leather armchair, smoking a fine cigar and sipping on a sherry. And you know, it's always good fun when a whiskey stokes my imagination and I start conjuring up oddly specific imagery. So yeah, anyway, we definitely do have a good one here, albeit a little bit predictable at times. It's very much a classic, traditional sherried Speyside profile, but as I said earlier, it's done well, so that's fine. It definitely should have a higher ABV. But to its credit, there are days where I'm okay with that 43%, just because the whiskey itself has such a delicate, understated character. So my score here is going to be 87. This is a very subtle, very elegant whiskey. Of course, you have been warned, this is also very light. If you want a big whiskey, you're not getting it here. If you want something big, loud, powerful, the obvious choice would be to go for the Aberlour. That one packs so much more punch. For me, this one's going to be the calm, well-mannered patriarch of the core range. It's not nearly as adventurous, but it is more nuanced and it is more polished. But you do need to be okay with the subtlety in this. And I'll admit, even for me, there are days where this is just too light. On the wrong day, I might give this something like 85, and on the right day, I might give it a 90. It all depends on where my palate's at. On some days, I really do pick up and appreciate the low-key complexities in this whiskey, but other days, it's just too light and I find it underwhelming. So take this score with a grain of salt. And you know, scores that fluctuate based on mood are a detractor. This is a premium whiskey. I paid good money for this, and I want the experience to be consistent. And the low ABV here really does damage that. So at the end of the day, this is a very good whiskey at times, but it should be better. It does what it does well, but the character is just a little bit too light, and the finish is disappointingly short. And that's a shame because I really do like the flavors in this. It's a legitimately sophisticated whiskey. But yeah, it's just too light, it's too weak, and the value's not great. Speaking of which, you know, value gets tricky when it comes to 18-year-old whiskeys. For me, 18 years is about the highest age that I'll just normally buy if it's not a birthday or some kind of special occasion. And the reason for that is that the value to price ratio of whiskeys, generally speaking, gets exponentially worse after 18 years old. Of course, some of the best whiskeys in the world are going to be older than 18 years, but oftentimes you're going to need a second mortgage just to pay for them. Usually 18 years is still in the affordable category, but some you're still paying too much. And our Aberlour here is not a particularly cheap 18-year-old, and the 500 milliliter bottle is also doing it no favors. So I don't think the value is great on this whiskey. I'm not going to recommend it to you guys. I think there are better, cheaper whiskeys out there, and there are better 18-year-old options as well. Alright, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. As always, hit subscribe down below, click that little bell icon, and of course, smash the like. Now, I do want to hear from you. Have you tried our Aberlour 18? What were your thoughts on it? Do you feel like you overpaid for it? And finally, down in the comments, let me know what you want to see me review next, and I'll keep it in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.